But we also had, because this was the key fastest growing tree, feeding and sheltering billions, disproportionately more than any other species of tree. I mean, look how big it is. From wild to domestic creatures, mammals, insects, birds, turtles, lizards, snakes, fish, salamanders, frogs, newts, toads ate the leaves. The leaves are highly nutritious. It was supporting, and then other creatures that were feeding on the creatures that were feeding on the tree. So this was disproportionately supporting and does anybody know, out of all the trees in Appalachia, how many of them were American chestnuts back in the day? How many? That's a good guess. 80. Any other guesses? Okay, so volume-wise, because they're bigger than other trees, you might be getting close to right, but 25%. So 1 in 4 trees was an American chestnut tree. And if there were 4 billion of them, how many trees were there across Appalachia? 16 billion, because 1/4 was American chestnut. That's a lot of trees. To lose 1/4 of your trees, and a tree that was disproportionately the one feeding everyone and everything, huge hit to the area, right? Okay. Now, how many of you go out for a walk in the forest, say in the last 10 years, have gone out for a walk in the forest? The forest that you're walking in now is a little different. It's a secondary forest. It's a forest that's been cut down and regrown. It's a forest that has lost keystone species and whole species like the passenger pigeon entirely gone. It's a different forest. Some of us, I've never been in a primary forest. Has anyone here ever been in a primary forest? And how was it different?
It's original. Not to me.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the water. So I've heard folks who are in their late 90s talk about what it was like when the American chestnuts were here. You know how in the summer the water goes down? It didn't do that. The banks of the creeks were so full of roots holding the moisture that the water level was up year-round. The world has changed. The world has changed so much. And it's changed in a way that doesn't support species survival, ours or others. So that's what a secondary forest is like. It's not teeming with fish and creatures. All right. So it had the reliable, abundant nut production that was higher in usable protein. It had a widespread habitat. They were everywhere. Your family could go out and pick up bushels and take them down to the local store and sell them. That's how people would get their money, maybe for school clothes and school supplies. It was an integral part of the life in Appalachia to eat and sell the American chestnut. And if I can get my little clicker working again. All right. So some called this the queen of the forest. Others call it the king of the forest. And the indigenous people here relied on the American chestnut. So who were the indigenous people in West Virginia? Cherokee, right, and others. And the Cherokee, they had a thing that they did. They, what the chestnut gave to them, they gave back. They befriended the chestnut. So they did a lot of things to help the chestnut grow. They did controlled burning to burn out the underbrush so the small trees could grow. So I already mentioned that they invited the settlers here, and it's hard to imagine that somebody could go out in the woods and get everything they needed to live. Because the wildlife was so abundant, you could just go hunt and fish. The other things like American chestnuts, you know, berries, all the things that you find in a abundant forest that's thriving on a good ecosystem were there, and people could do that for a long time. That's how things were here. It was a very abundant place. It was a very different place than we have now. So look at the size. I'm in your way. Look at the size of those trees. A chestnut tree had humongous arms, humongous branches, very big. And it was a part of their social life too. You see them having a social event around the chestnut trees. They may have been, any time of year celebrating around the trees. So I want to put this in context. This map here shows biodiversity hotspots in the US. And if you look all the way over to the Pacific side, all the way over on the left, you see a lot of that biodiversity there. And then you see this spot over here in West Virginia and Appalachia, and we call that the Amazon of North America. That is one of the most biodiverse places. Now, what is biodiversity? It's what makes us have good air. It's what makes us have clean water. It's what it's so important to the survival of the human species, biodiversity. And so that is a very important place, not just for the United States, but for the world. Survival of the human species in the world. So you see a little bit down there in Florida too. This is what it looked like after they lost the American chestnut. Imagine, it was probably, whoops, I went the wrong way. It was probably like over here when you had the American chestnut all up and down this area. It's still the Amazon of North America, even without the American chestnut. So that's a really important place to protect. So what happened? Ominous times were coming. Ominous times were coming. Appalachia was the center of the Civil War. West Virginia, Tennessee, we were front lines of the Civil War. People were divided. People were on both sides. The resources, the army would come through. Yes. Thank you. the resources. The army would come through, and they would take your animals, and they would take your crops, and they would conscript the men, and it just really, really destroyed the area. And that's when things began to be hard times here. That's when our hard times started. I did want to mention that a man, for example, if he was afraid that his family wouldn't survive without him if he was conscripted, would often hide in the mountains. They'd have to go hide because their family was not going to make it without them. And what happened if you hid when they were trying to draft you into the army? Anybody know? You could be shot on sight. You could be shot. It was a very scary time, and a lot of people were killed. After that, we had logging. Logging came to West Virginia. Look at the size of that tree. That's like an American chestnut tree. That's what the trees were like. That's the primary forest that you and I, most of us, have never seen. So logging came, and logging hit the place hard. Entire hillsides, entire forests just completely cut down. It was just unchecked logging. There was no controls on it. Just who could make the most money. And the logging really hit things hard here. So think about this. What's going to be the most likely to survive a disease that comes along or a pathogen? A big, strong tree or a little tree? Right, big tree. So small groves of small trees tend to have more diseases and pathogens and that sort of thing and not survive. So when you cut down all the really healthy specimens of a tree, you make it less likely that that species will survive. And then it happened, the blight. The blight. Has anybody ever studied or read about that at all? What happened? One person, just a couple people. And it started around 1904, and somebody brought some Japanese chestnut trees into a botanical garden in New York. Oh boy. And those trees in Japan and China have developed over hundreds of thousands of years with the blight, so they're immune to it. Our trees were not. And so it spread like wildfire across. When it started going down, it started going west, North Carolina, West Virginia, all down that whole area I showed you. And can you see the red spot from where you are? That's what the blight looks like, and what it does is it girdles the tree. And the tree can't get any nutrients. And what happens is it kills it doesn't completely kill the tree, it kills the tree above the ground. And there's this, are there any engineers in the room? Anybody an engineer in here? No. So think about this. For some reason, it can't kill the roots. It kills the tree. So that makes you think. So it goes and we lost about 3.5 billion trees. Now I'm going to talk about that a little bit, the crash and the cure. In 1930, this is an actual forest after it was hit by the blight. Just they fall down. American chestnut wood is prized. You can go out in the forest and find a tree that fell down 100 years ago, and the wood is still good to use. Amazing wood. They called it the cradle to grave tree because your cradle would be made out of chestnut, and so would your coffin. So it just spread down. I'm not sure if that one is actually West Virginia. I'd have to look. I don't know off the top of my head, but yes, it would be Appalachia for sure. And then the national parks come in like the 1930s. So the blight was pretty much by 1940 had hit everywhere, except maybe a few stands out in that were rare out in Wisconsin. We actually have one out there in Wisconsin that didn't get hit till the 60s. So it was great to study it. So the national parks, are national parks a good thing? Yes, right. They protect areas, right? Well, what if they're taking your land? What if they're cordoning off a great big area for the Smoky Mountains National Park or the Shenandoah Park, and you lived on it and you got to move? So think about this. The people, the Scots-Irish who came here, they had lived, their ancestors I wrote a paper about this, about ancient Ireland, that they had lived for 3,000 years under a system where you lived in a small kingdom, maybe 3,000 people, maybe 4,000 people in your kingdom, and you never went anywhere else. If you went outside of your kingdom, then there was no law protecting you, and anything could happen to you. So here are these people who, for various disasters and so forth to survive, had to leave Ireland, Scotland, etc., come over here, and they've now found a place that they've made home for many years. Their family has stayed in the same place, in the same hollow, or wherever that you know. How many of you have lived in the same place for 10 years? How many the same place for 20 years? How about 30? 50? So imagine when they came in and said, you got to move, we're making a park out of you can't live here anymore. So these are people who had been through, their families had been through the Civil War and all that. And then they went through the logging. Then they went through, I didn't talk about the mills, but then they went through the blight and losing the beloved tree. And now they're being kicked off their property. So there's a great writer, John Williams, who has a book about Appalachia, and he wrote about the people were crying. The people left crying. Like everybody was leaving with tears streaming down their face, literally, because it was so hard. There's a famous poet, Yeats, who wrote, too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Tells you, it gives you a little background on the culture of our people. So then we're going to skip forward because we've got about half the time here, to the American Chestnut Foundation. So of course, everybody's trying to figure out how to save this beloved tree. Economically, it was, a powerhouse. And it could be an economic powerhouse for Appalachia. So a bunch of scientists got together and they started something called the American Chestnut Foundation. And they said, we want to save this tree. And so there were some ideas. So they started out with an American chestnut tree and a Chinese chestnut tree, 50-50, and bred them together. Why would they breed them together? So it could fight the blight with its immunity, because the Chinese chestnut is immune. So then what they would do, they start with that 50-50 tree, and when they get the nuts from that, then they might have a tree that's a little more than 50-50, maybe it's 40-60, or let me just say 60-40. And then they wait for that tree to grow, and then they move a little further, and then they might get to 70-30. But this is all incremental, so it takes a lot of patience. And that's what they've been doing. They've been doing that, trying to get the perfect tree that's got just enough Chinese chestnut to be immune, but it's got all the wonderful qualities of the American chestnut. That wonderful wood, that wonderful sweet taste, that abundance. So that's what they're working toward. And the American Chestnut Foundation, I found out about them. They do that conference in Rowellsburg every year in October. I think it's the first week. And I started to work with them. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work with them. see where we go here. But let's talk about fires in flight a little bit. Now, according to NASA, the summer of 2023 was the Earth's hottest. We don't have data on this year yet. Summer's not quite over. Has it been hot this summer? Oh, all right. Exceptional heat swept across the world. There were wildfires in Canada and Hawaii, searing heat waves in South America, Japan, Europe, and the US. So how many of you remember the wildfires? Did it affect you here? Okay. Where we live over near Falling Waters, Shepherdstown, I was training for a marathon at the time. I couldn't run. I couldn't go out and breathe out. I had to wear a mask when I went out. When those particles go in your lungs, they don't come out. Your heart has to work harder for the rest of your life when you breathe out. And think about it. The wild creatures, they can't go in their house or put on a mask. Once they're affected, they're affected. Their heart has to work harder the rest of their life. So I got to talk to the guy, Robert Watson, who created the Leeds Green Building System, which has changed the world. And I didn't expect to be there, but I was over at NCTC in Shepherdstown National Conservation Training Center for a program, and I stayed after, and I got to watch him talk to about several hundred high school and college students who are environmental activists. And this is what he said to them. He said to them, it's not temperature change that's the problem. It's the speed of temperature change. He said, I get up and I live on a 10th floor of a building in New York, and every day I can either take the elevator down, or I can walk down the stairs, or I can jump out the window. We're jumping out the window. The speed at which the temperature is changing has just gotten so fast. That's what's abnormal. It's changing so fast. He said by 2050, it will be too hot for human and other creatures to live on the earth. He said, do one thing and do it now. He said, we can't all fix this problem. He said, I bought you some time with the new system where they're building buildings that are all over the world that are much more easier on the environment. He said, pick one thing, one small thing, and do it now. Now is the time. Just pick one thing and do it now. So that's kind of my slogan, and I picked helping the American chestnut to help the world, to help it get cooler, to help it feed the creatures fleeing climate change, etc. So I'm going to encourage you to pick something. So back to our hot spot. Okay, we know that this is a really important place. Why is it so important? Well, biodiversity is important, that's one thing. But look at this. Species are moving north on the entire eastern half of the country. Guess where they're coming? This is a Nature Conservancy map made by scientists who have mapped, by tracking creatures, entire species are moving. According to National Geographic, 50% of all species are on the move. 50%. They're moving to higher elevations or cooler temperatures north. Insects are moving, unfortunately, about 11 miles a year. Marine mammals about 4 miles a year, and terrestrial creatures a couple of miles. The whole species moves every year. So I'm going to try to, there's a video I wanted to show you that was pretty dynamic if I can get to it. Quickly. It's just like a 1-minute video. It's in the presentation, but we couldn't get it. We tried before, and we couldn't to get it to play here. Okay.
Ever tried Seeds of Change?
I'm planting my own rice. It's organic.
Oh, mine's organic too and ready in 90 seconds.
Of course it is.
The convenient way to eat healthy. Healthy eating for real life.
Well, it won't. I didn't. Let's see. PowerPoint. Escape. Okay. So here it is. So here we go. It's not showing. Sean, it's not showing. It's still not, it's not showing. It should be. We're still seeing a starry sky somewhere cold. Well, we'll skip it if we can't get it, but it's such a great presentation. I'd love to show it. No. It's wait, is that it? Just a second. I think that's it. Well, it was a good wake-up moment because what it shows is that they're getting seeds from the south and they're moving seeds north. So they're getting trees that are adapted to hotter temperatures and they're moving them north. And it shows a fantastic map, which I'll just show you the map, which we were already looking at, but it shows the map in motion. It's very dynamic. And shows how all the creatures are coming up. And we call it the Appalachian Mountain Escape Corridor. So species fleeing temperature change on the eastern half of the U.S. are coming here. Why? Why are they coming up here? Why are they coming? Why would they come here? Well, the heat is driving them to come. But why are they picking here? Why would they come through the mountains and not somewhere else? Well, one, it's less populated. Excellent. Less populated. And also, when you have a place like we have in Appalachia, you have hundreds of microclimates. So if our species can't survive in this niche, we can move over here, or we can move up here, or we can move down here. So this is where they're coming. And so we've got this huge biodiversity here, okay, up here. And then coming up, all those species, what's going to happen? What'd you say? Competition. Right, so we don't know what's going to happen to our species here. We don't know what's going to happen to the species coming. But wouldn't it be great if they had an abundant food source that could feed them so they didn't have to compete as much? So that's one of the ideas that has driven us to try to bring back the American chestnut. So I think Sean will just bail on that and we'll just go back to the presentation. No, that's no worries. It's more fun to watch a cool video than to hear me explain it. Right? Yes, just a second, let me show him where we are. Go down to that map. Here. Does this? Well, that's fine. You're getting close. There, you're close. Keep going, just a few more. the map with the purple on it. So what's the question? Okay.
Throughout your presentation, the world is a different place. The culture is a different place. And I'm just wondering, well, is it our responsibility to adapt to whatever the change is that's happening? Or is it the world's responsibility to adapt to us?
So is the question, is it our responsibility to adapt to the changes, or is it the world's responsibility to adapt to us?
I wonder how you think of that. Or you think about that. I mean,
Is there a comment over here? Well, you know, those are really good things to think about. And that's a question you have to answer for yourself. I can't answer for you. That's a decision we all make, I think. So let's finish up the presentation and see what some of those things are. All right. So this just points out that West Virginia is right in the thick of it. So, you know, that's us. In Vermont, I'm going to skip this because we don't have time. In Vermont, they're actually doing a lot of work. This tree could help a lot of species survive. How many of them are there out there? How many are still out there? This is a lot of people don't, there are 227 million American chestnut trees already out there, from small to 15 to 18 inches around, alive. If we could get this species that's already out there, with a lot of them already ready to produce, to stay alive, it could make a big difference. This is the range, showing you the range again of where they are. We got that slide in there again somehow. Okay, so let's finish up by talking about what are the projects that I'm doing. So this is exciting for me. I've worked with both the hybrid and the pure. So at Tabler Farm, we started with 24 hybrid American chestnuts, and we're part of this. We got excited about this. We're part of this, so if our generation of trees does really well, those nuts will be used to keep moving toward that perfect tree. You can come out there and see them anytime you're there, whether I'm there or not. And we're using mycoforestry, so half our trees are planted with mushrooms and half are not. We're trying to find out what will make it the most resilient. Anybody here mushroom hunt? Anybody ever eat a chanterelle? A chanterelle? It's a mushroom. So take a look at this picture. You see how that mushroom has all those, it looks like roots under it? A mushroom is like an apple on a tree, and this mushroom is on a tree. This mushroom, is on a plant. Just like an apple is on a tree, a mushroom is the fruit on a plant that you can't see underground. And so what's happening here is you have a tree that might have roots that go out to here. But when it pairs up with mycelium that connect to its roots, all of a sudden it has a source of nutrients and water that go out to here. So all trees pair with mycelium, they've discovered. You just have to figure out which kind of mycelium pairs with which tree. So we're experimenting with Appalachian chanterelles to see if there have been studies that show that those helped. So we're trying that out. And we get the community involved and the students involved, and everybody helps plant. And last year, with that horrible heat in August and September, we thought we lost about 9 trees. So we replanted 9 more, and then 8 of the 9 came back. So now we have, I think, 32 or 33. This is just a bunch of folks out planting. And so we have a food forest at Shepherd University. All kinds of native trees, linden, hackberry, sugar maples, and we added, and this is the section of chestnuts we added to it. And that's my little map of that's me. That's my little map of all the ones. Then we went to, chestnuts like to grow up high. They're the trees of the hills and the mountains. They like to grow up on the trees, on the hills and the mountains, so we found a place in Berkeley Springs at about 1,000 feet above sea level, and we planted a pure American chestnut forest. What a beautiful hillside. It's never seen such a beautiful place. It's just so beautiful. So we planted on 3 levels from 970 to 1,000 feet above sea level, and you see our little group of folks planting, our volunteers. We had fun. We have fun when we do these projects, and we can do them anywhere. So our trees did not do so well because of the drought in early in the year. So we're going to have to replace most of them. But we're also doing chanterelles there. Half are planted with the mycelium inoculation on the roots, and half aren't. And we're going to see if it helps them grow. So the last part of my project, the final part that you can go to and see, is called chestnutters.org. It's a tree watchers website. Remember all those people who raised their hand and said, we know where the trees are? Well, it's a group of citizen scientists like the ones who came out and planted at all of our projects. And what I'm putting on this website is from experts, successful remedies for the blight. So like if you have some trees, and if you could go out and look at them once every quarter and see if they've got the blight, and if they do, you can go to our website and get the remedy to cure the tree, or you could call us or email us and tell us, and we'll send somebody to do it if you tell us where the tree is. So that's the plan, to keep those trees healthy, because once they get big enough, they're a lot more likely to survive. So this is a picture from our website, Chestnutters, Making the World Cooler. So that's a little question.
How far outside of Shepherdstown is the
Tabler Farm is about a mile outside of Shepherdstown. It's right there. The Berkeley Springs one is, a little further. It's over near the observatory in Berkeley Springs. The guy who runs the observatory, we did it on his property. So you can join us. You can join there. You can find out how to make a soil pack. See that little tree with the circle around it? That's the size a lot of the trees out there are. You can put a chaga mud pack on it. You can put a soil pack around it for several months, up above and below the canker, and get the canker to go away. And I'm not going to talk much about hypovirulence. That's just we've found a virus that kills the fungus, and we're trying to work with that, but it's really hard to pair up. So I'm just going to leave you with this. If you choose, and maybe you don't choose, some of you, but if you do choose to since I like the comment, if we're part of the problem, if we're part of the issue, we can do one thing now, and one thing you could do is befriend a chestnut tree. You could just every 2 or 3 months go out and look at it and see if it has the blight, and then if it does, we do something about it. And you know, if you're out there and you have one of those trees that's got nuts, and it's an American chestnut with real nuts, go take them out in the woods and toss them out. I heard one professor who's really an expert say that. Just, you know, help the tree grow. Go out and give it, if we're having a drought and you know where a tree is, take it a jug of water. You know, you can befriend a tree, and that might be the one small thing you choose to do that makes a difference. And that's my little tree right there, one of our trees from Berkeley Springs that's making it. It's about this high. But with these trees are so tenacious, they grow so fast. These are the trees when in their day, when there was a forest fire, they would spring up and take over because they are really good comeback trees. It's the kind of tree that you could coppice, you could cut it and it would grow back. Do one thing now. So do you have any, I salute you all for coming out. Thank you very much. I salute you for making the effort and for participating. I hope, did everybody get a chestnut? Oh, you can eat them whenever. Was I supposed to tell you to eat them? Did she tell you not to eat them? Oh, yeah. Well, we can do that, sure. That's a good idea. So what questions do we have? I like to try to let people hear your question, so let's start here.
Do extension offices have starter trees available for just the common people?
To get a starter tree, that's the question. Does an extension office have it? They do not. You would want to talk to the American Chestnut Foundation. On our website, there's a link to the American Chestnut Foundation. I encourage you, one thing you could do, one very simple thing, is you could join for $40 the American Chestnut Foundation and fund their work. Once you're a member, it's easier to get seedlings and nuts. If you want to do a project on your property through me, I could probably get them free because it's a school project. So I hope everybody gets to taste one. Does that answer your question?
Yes. You had a question back here?
Yes, two questions. One is the presence of the Chinese chestnut tree right now that we have everywhere, are they a danger to any of the American chestnut trees trying to thrive? And the other, that's okay, answer.
So the question is, are the chestnut trees a danger to the American chestnut trees thriving? The Chinese chestnut do not have the blight, so they're not going to give the blight to the American chestnut. The Chinese ones don't have blight. So having a Chinese chestnut, I have never heard it being a danger to an American chestnut.
Now, what was my other question? It kind of comes and goes, but it was very interesting. I was wondering, my understanding is you can grow them, and they do really well till they're about 15 years old, and then they die. What do they die from?
Hey, that was a great question. She's heard that these trees die at 15 years old, and what do they die from? Exactly what we're talking about. They die from the blight. It's airborne. They get it usually around 15 years old, and they're still not very big around. And that's when you would put that mud pack on it. You would go to our website and get the mud pack, put it on it so it would survive the blight. And if we get any other cures from experts, we're going to put them on there. So we're going to put the latest information on there. If you sign up and join, whenever I get new information, it goes out to everybody whose email I have. Who else had a question over here? There was a question. I saw one more hand. Was it over here? Surely you have a question. Yes.
Is this recyclable? It looks like it is.
Yes, it is recyclable. That's why I got it. We try to do that. Try to read. Any other questions? How about comments? Anybody got ideas for me? Anybody know a mushroom hunter who could help me find Appalachian Cantharellus? Well, we're just experimenting with the chanterelles. I mean, we don't know what the perfect pairing is for American chestnuts, and it might be different in Wheeling than it is in Morgantown. Probably not too different, but it might be. So, what's he doing?
Mushrooms, but he's trying to grow, what's this thing?
Oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, reishi, truffles. That's hard. Growing truffles is hard. Yeah. More power to him. Well, I just, y'all are a wonderful audience. I love that you were thinking. This is great. So feel free to email me anytime. You can, send me messages through chestnutters.org. It has my email on there. And thank you.